Good night and welcome to DLP TV. My name is Melissa Howard and I am your host for tonight. First, let me apologize for the absence of the leader of the opposition, Mr. Ralph Thorne. He is unable to attend tonight's show. Joining me tonight is, to my right, is Mr. Rowe, the candidate for City of Bridgetown. And to his right is Ms. Felicia Dujon, the candidate for St. James North. And to her right is Mr. Damien Fanus, attorney at law. All right, to start off tonight's show, we're going to play a little video from Parliament about 2 weeks ago from Cynthia Ford, the representative for St. Thomas.
Because I might have to call that not lost to a mass. With the challenges that we are having, and I must tell you, the Honorable Minister has been trying, and I must thank sincerely the Permanent Secretary and his staff who did a tour with me 3 Fridays ago. And they actually saw. I understand that in St. Thomas it rains every day. And therefore we're going to have lots of water. The drainage is poor, and so bridges are being damaged. There are many challenges. But I want to indicate, Mr. Speaker, I believe that more can be done for us in rural Barbados where it rains every day, and there are not proper channels where the water can go off the road and make life better for us. Yes, I have gotten some improvement, but it is unsatisfactory at this time, especially now that the road is closed at the Bridgefield area, and people have to be juggling all over and to go through those dark roads, not even a tower light to go through Vaucluse, Mr. Speaker. So you can imagine me going to a little fair, going to something wherever in the night time, driving as a single woman. And then I have to go through those lonesome roads, 3 and 4 acres. So, 3 or 4 miles of darkness, and it really is not accommodating at all. The people in the parish are extremely upset at the way it is being done. And therefore, I want, Mr. Speaker, to indicate as well that there seem to be no synergies with the agencies that offer services to Barbados. I know in the past, and on a Barbados Labour Party administration under the honourable leader for St. Peter, now deceased, Mr. Speaker, there were arrangements for the road works, the water authority, the light and power, the persons dealing with gas and telephone. When they were finished digging up the road, doing whatever excavation, somebody from the Ministry of Public Works and Transport had to be there to make sure that when they were finished digging up the road, that at least the road was being resealed, and there were always separate funds available to be able to cover back those areas that were opened up. Now, water authority is doing as it likes. Every day there's another opening, but no closure to it, Mr. Speaker. I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, sir, how angry I am. I am really very, very angry at what has happened, Tuppence and Halfpenny Gully, as well as the junction leading to the post office at St. Thomas. March was 3 years, Mr. Speaker, that they started to build up a wall, build up what would have been rock surface that was cut to make a sidewalk, so people going Lion Castle and those communities can get in with safety because it is a bus route. Mr. Speaker, till today, it is not completed yet. All of the cans are there. You're not seeing anybody on the job. And I'm forever grumbling and calling and asking. Nobody can answer me. And I'm extremely disappointed with how we are operating as a people. I am not saying that the people in the Ministry of Public Works are not doing their work. I am saying the supervision is the problem. And therefore, I would wish for something to happen as soon as possible and make sure that there's some officer or some officers in the Ministry of Public Works who, when the telephone company is going to dig up, or the water authority, or whichever entity, that those people come back, because it's always in the money in the budget. And if they dig up the road, Mr. Speaker, and displace people, they should be able to use their budget to come back and reseal it to make safety on the road for all.
All right, in this video, the Honorable Miss Cynthia Ford, the representative for St. Thomas, she spoke on several issues. So the first topic we're going to discuss that she mentioned would be the drainage in St. Thomas, and the amount of issues that they have with flooding when the rain falls. Is this something that y'all have witnessed in your own constituencies? Dale.
Yes, drainage in Orleans, Chapman Lane area, um, like Foot Lane, and a lot of the surrounding areas in the city. So this evening we were canvassing, and one of the residents, she said, Mr. Rowe, when rainfall heavy, they have to put a long plank
Mhm.
to get into their gaps, to get into their homes. So we, not we, the government of Barbados wasting time. The government can take money and waste it carelessly, but yet still we have persons that when rainfall they can't get from the homes to work or from work to home. The condition very bad. I have tons of videos and pictures that I can share. So I believe this is the worst government we ever had. Sad to see it. Oh boy.
Ms. Dujon, drainage in St. James North.
Well, good
Sorry.
evening, viewers. Good evening, everyone. And well, I think it was quite interesting to listen to the MP for her constituency speak about her own government and what her government has failed to do for her own constituency. So you can imagine persons that have seem a little bit dissatisfied with the government and how they feel the government has been. We've always had problems with road repairs right after, whether it's the water company or how they have come back to do any kind of intervention or return to do any kind of intervention. But it seems that the MP now realizes that her government has not been listening to the views of the public. Her government has not been serving the public. And I'm glad that her voice of reason is coming out now. Honesty and integrity is finally showing its face in this government. And I think if the Prime Minister listens to what her colleague is saying, that something should be done. And this is not the first time that an MP has raised on that matter in Parliament dealing with waterworks. And we've seen it in St. James North, we've seen in Trent, we've seen in Roadview during the by-election. We saw all those roadworks are happening. But I'm still getting and receiving calls that a number of issues have been concerning, because what happens is that when you undig the road, the water comes in, and so you get the raw material still being flooded, and that causes flooding in the areas as well. It causes constituents not being able to leave their homes, as Comrade have said. And so I think it's important that what MP Ford have said, that we take it into consideration. This is a very serious concern that the government has not doing its work. It's not has been allocating funds in places that it should not. It brings again to the question that who is the MP for, or the minister responsible for transport and works, who is also the deputy prime minister.
Yes.
And if her colleagues are having problems with how she's managing that ministry, I think it's something that the government need to look deeply into. And I think members of the public, I think citizens have understood that this government has been dysfunctional for a while. And the MP did speak about the disunity and the synergy within ministries, that Water and Works is doing one thing and the other ministries are not taking note. And I'm glad that she brought up the past prime minister, that he was
Yes, interesting enough. She,
that he
she compared
yes,
the leadership under Owen Arthur, the then Prime Minister, to the current leadership now, which would be Mia Motley.
well, let the heart speak truth and allow the heart to speak the type of truth that the public needs to hear. And whenever it is said, I think the public, it draws the concern that the public, they have been complaining about it. And yes, she draws the concern about single women and going out late at night, the safety issues. It's not only about the roadworks, but it's about safety concerns.
Yeah.
And coming from a female representative, I think it's very important that the government understands the serious nature of crime within the society, where it's also tied in to infrastructural work in the society as well.
Yeah, when she made the comparison between the Honorable Owen Arthur and the current PM, she spoke about collaboration between state-owned entities, which would have been Water Authority, and then you having persons coming to dig up the road, which would be Transport and Work. Why is it so difficult for ministries to collaborate to achieve a positive outcome in a project?
Well, let me first say that is probably the strongest rebuke I've ever heard of anybody in regards to the current prime minister coming from her own party. It casts a light to show that
the difference in leadership styles and probably organization skills is night and day
Mm.
from the previous leader to the now current leader. You would expect that these ministries, when they have their inter plans when it comes to carrying out projects, that one phase, if one particular ministry's department is in charge of this phase, there's some form of communication so as to not, in a sense, go and redo the same work that was done previously, because
Mm.
then now that leads to wastage. It leads to wastage of money, wastage of manpower, materials, and in a sense, probably even congestion, because when you're doing woodworks, it congests the traffic and people who are coming through and through. So then when you link it back to drainage now, because obviously our drains are poorly maintained, a little rainfall now, in a sense, it drains back up and then it starts the flooding. And then you see the collection of water on the roads, and individuals have to slow down, and that's what backs up the traffic. And it is really sad to see that it took 7 years for somebody to come up and say it. You know, this is not right. My constituents are suffering. Even though that I am a part of this government, I will not toe the line anymore. I have to say something
Mm.
because nothing is being done. And if that is the case, then it sheds a light on my leadership. When really and truly, I know what needs to be done. And in previous administrations, I knew how things were done before, but this is not the case. So for that fact, I applaud the minister for coming out and stating her views and speaking truth to power to what she's seen in her constituency, because it's her constituents who are suffering.
Mhm.
It's her constituencies who have to travel the roads roads are poorly maintained, poorly lit, and then that opens them up to all sorts of crime or being a victim of some form of attack or whatever. So basically, I don't want to say I'm impressed, but I have to be impressed with the minister, because I'm not really impressed with this government. But I will give her her flowers today for actually speaking out, and because it is her constituents who are suffering, and it's her constituents who will benefit from added attention in
Mhm.
regard to what their issues are in the constituency.
All right. She spoke about the length of time that it takes for the road projects to be done. She said there was one particular that started 3 years ago, and it still has not been completed. I've noticed several other projects within her constituency alone that started for a very long time and has not been completed. Is this something that you have noticed throughout Barbados?
Yes, honestly, that road that she's speaking about, that is right around the corner from Leicester Vaughan.
Mhm.
And when I have clients in that area,
Mhm.
and that up there is so bad. It was like that since last year. So it shows me, right, this government don't understand SOPs. Because SOPs, once you have those SOPs in place.
Please let the audience understand what the SOP is.
So standard operation procedure.
Mhm.
So if they had the correct SOPs in place,
Mhm.
management is not a Hollywood show just to come look pretty, get headlines. If you are in a managerial post,
Mhm.
you have to understand your SOPs. You have to understand what needs to be done. So the government of Barbados focus on making promises as opposed to making the people priority. So the priorities are, we should not have to be asking you to fix roads. You get me? That should not be a promise. You shouldn't be coming out and saying, well, the World Cup is coming, so we can fix roads. So poor governance, poor management, they don't have nothing in place. Look, it cannot take you 8 months to finish less than 200 meters, because that stretch is less than 200 meters
Mhm.
from the bottle factory right around the corners. But yeah.
Yeah.
And that was so since September last year. My daughter attends Leicester Vaughan. So I can tell you how up there is ridiculous. And the road going all the way down to Sherborne Primary School is ridiculous. So the government focus always have been parties. the regathering, putting the money in the regathering, and I agree with the MP because at night is a risk. So when you have to drive that road, you have to completely slow down. And if you don't slow down, you can damage your vehicle or cause accident. So while slowing down, you're liable to get one or two guys run up on you, stick you, take your car, because the guys into carjacking now.
Yeah, it is here.
But the other question that I have would be, why did it take 3 years? There's a very controversial social media person, I don't want to call names, but he's very controversial. I think he did a video clip one time speaking about the roads in Barbados, and that was one of the roads that he spoke about.
Yeah.
A very controversial person and social media person. And the question is, with a pending election, now we're seeing MPs going against their own government, and it's kind of contradictory in a sense, because where were you in the last 3 years? What were you doing? That you knew that your constituents were living in those conditions and knowing the challenges that they have been going through. Because every year around this time, we have the rainy season. And this is what happens. We get flooding and we get that kind of influx. And there was a time I was driving through St. Thomas, and right there on the bridge, you could actually see water entering people's homes. How you as an MP can live with that for the last 3 years and not raise those kinds of questions, not challenge it every opportunity that you have, because you're in Parliament, you're an MP, and this is what you need to do: agitate and advocate on behalf of your constituents. So in the last 3 years, you've noticed that these works are not being done. So at the same time, I would like to say, yes, Madam Minister, that we appreciate what you're doing, but we wanted you to do that a long time ago, because people have been hurting, and I am quite sure they were not being compensated for what has happened. When could you imagine your bed's been flooded, your children's clothing and everything being flooded out, because a government does not take the responsibility to know that jobs are completed the way and the time that it should be. So in as much as we can say, yes, we want to applaud the minister, we also want to tell the minister it's a little too late.
Yeah,
It's a little too late, because election is pending, and hopefully the government sends a new representative, because I don't know what's going to happen after 30 years in that constituency. 30 years in that same constituency.
Yes.
And you have not seen the urge or the need to agitate in a way that will challenge the government to do what is right and proper for the people. And it also means that you'd have to, speak with your colleagues. They're your colleagues. You work with them. They're part of your party. They should see the initiative that, yes, we need to do something, and we need to do it as quickly as possible, not only in terms of the constituency itself. It's a safety issue. It's a safety issue in terms of we do not want, we've had cases where people, houses have been, we've had cases in St. James North where people have drowned. That has happened. So these are the kinds of concerns I think people really need to take those matters seriously. We've seen what is happening in other countries where flooding has become a hazard for people's lives. And we have to take those matters very seriously. We cannot have people go into Parliament day in and day out speaking on those issues, and there are no solutions, no effective solutions that will deal with those matters.
Well, it should be noted that St. Thomas, just like St. James North, is a constituency that has been represented by the Barbados Labour Party. A comment online says 25 years. I'm not exactly sure how many years, but it has been represented by the Barbados Labour Party for many, 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 many years. And these roles are not being done. And she has outlined other issues within the constituency. We're going to play another video.
There's another video.
Yeah, therefore.
Warren's entrance, there is a bus stop. The bus stop and the pedestrian crossing are almost simultaneously working together, which is against any practice at all. But if a traffic light is put there, as soon as you come out of the roundabout and you come to pass the entrance to the polyclinic, then put a pedestrian crossing there. A pedestrian crossing is there, but hardly anybody respects it. A traffic light or a light like the one you put by the schools, where that light flashes all the time, because you're talking about individuals who come with walking sticks. They come with wheelchairs. They don't have anybody to bring them. Somebody assist them to get over the bus or whatever traffic they're in. You have some who have prostheses. There's some of them who are so elderly, they can't get across the road. And that road has about 3 lanes because one turns into Eden Lodge Terrace or whatever it is called. And then to compound it all, the ZRs line off to block off even the Eden Lodge Road. Sometimes it's 3 and 4, and I'm thankful within the last few weeks, the police officers are there. As soon as the police officers leave, Mr. Speaker, they go back and block the entrances again. And when you're crossing, to go across from either side, it is the most dangerous thing you could ever want. I have never seen a society fall apart with discipline in this way at all, because we believe that we should give people freedom, and when you give them the freedom, the latitude, they can do as they like. We have to bring back law and order in this country if we are to continue to live safe and well. Mr. Speaker, to talk about the lighting, because we're in rural Barbados, so we hardly have any lights. But when you go down that Lancaster Road, Mr. Speaker, from St. Thomas Parish Church all the way down to nearly St. Lucy, it is the poorest lighting you could ever want, or none at all. And for many, many kilometers, there is no lighting at all. When people get off the bus and working in the hotel, and they have to walk down to go down through Lancaster, to get down through Morgan, or they have to go to any of the communities, it is stark dark. They have to ask families and friends to come and meet them at the bus stop because of the darkness. I believe that we too in rural Barbados deserve the benefits that the rest of this country receive whenever it happens.
All right, during the recent by-election in St. James North, a topic about the street lights on the highway was very prevalent during that time. Right now, we have Ms. Felicia Dujon, the candidate for St. James North, who can enlighten us about the street light issue. They promised that China was going to give us 300 street lights. Still haven't seen them as yet. They did? Mm-hmm.
Well, it's been 2 months. It's been 2 months since that promise and more. It's been 2 months that this government has promised the people that those lights would have been 2 months since the by-election. And of course, more bread than butter. This is the government that we're dealing with. Lots of promises and no tangible outcomes from them. And I think that is what is very concerning. And I think what is very important, everything that the MP have said here now, it goes back and reflects to the Deputy Prime Minister, because the buck stops at her ministry. She's responsible for transport and works, and it shows that there's something that is happening there. I don't know if the MP or if the minister will respond to it, will respond to her colleague or to the public, to let the public know what is happening with those conditions, what is happening with the lighting situation in those constituencies. And I believe that it's not those constituencies only. I think it's island-wide that we have problems with poor lighting, we have problems with road infrastructure, uncompleted road infrastructure. And I think these are the kinds of questions that we need to raise. The minister needs to respond to that. The Deputy Prime Minister needs to respond to those kinds of questions, the kinds of issues that have been raised by her own colleagues, to let us know what is happening. So she does not have to directly respond to constituents, at least respond to your colleague. Your colleague has concerns about lighting in her constituency. How do you respond to that? And she's a senior MP.
Yeah, not just her constituency. She mentioned from the roundabout from Lancaster all the way to St. Lucie. That covers about 4 constituencies.
Yes. And we should ask the MPs, are they having concerns? Are their constituencies having concerns in that constituency as well? Because you seem to, and I'm glad that we have those clips, because it seems that those representatives have not really challenged their own colleagues. We need to find out, and I think it's very important, and I always tell our constituents, you need to listen to the budget allocation and see how much has been allocated for the Ministry of Transport and Works. Millions of dollars have been allocated in those funding. And if we are getting any grants, if we are getting any kind of donations, if we are getting any lighting infrastructure, what is the input? What is the outcome? There is no kind of discourse. There's no kind of dialogue with the public. We had a by-election and we heard all of those promises. We're going to get lights to help single mothers, people in the constituencies. With the increase of crimes, we'll have better lighting infrastructure. 2 months later, absolutely nothing. Very same thing, you're seeing the MPs actually raising the same concerns that I did, and nothing is going to come out of it. But hopefully by election, we will see lots of lights going up. It will be like Christmas. So let's see how that works out. So I believe that we have to continue to agitate a government. I think a very incompetent government, because if you're hearing it from the constituents and now you're hearing it from your own colleagues, it really tells you that it's either they're not listening to anyone right now, or that they choose not to do any kind of interventions on those matters.
So we have a PM that is doing her own thing, running her own entire show.
Well, having bread without butter. So I think that's the issue that we're having.
What I believe as relates to the MPs, right?
Mhm.
The MPs, this government was in power for the past 7 years. As a representative, I believe that you should have a to-do list.
I think I did that.
This to-do list would show you then a needs analysis that what you need to do in your constituency.
Yeah.
If this is 7 years in government, and she's now highlighting this, Cynthia Ford is now highlighting these issues, it shows me as a manager that she's a very poor manager. Because if 7 years later, you're not identifying areas in your constituency that want lights, I think you should be fired. Every single MP should be fired. Because in Bayland, Fairview Place need lighting. Danlow Lane need lighting. I can also give you the poll numbers.
Mhm.
So I am not the sitting MP. However, I know the issues and challenges that my constituents face.
Mhm.
So as a representative, it's disappointing when I look at these people and I go think about these people. Because no, she in Parliament when this
was about 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. And she's now highlighting these issues after 25 years. It shows poor management. No hotel or financial institution would have a manager managing the operation for 7 years and don't want to address things that maintenance could address. This is a small fix. This is a small fix.
I'm sure they find lighting for regathering.
Yes, the best lighting for regathering.
Well, I will say the new geriatric hospital, which is just across the road from the famous botanical gardens. If you drive past there at night, you will probably see about 20 to 30 street lights from the entrance of the building right up
An
to the
empty building.
Empty building.
So are these lights
Empty
that we are
building.
seeing some of the lights that were promised from China?
High possibility.
Where are the rest?
That regathering.
I take this, as Dave was saying, not only does it highlight the poor management of these MPs in their constituency, we have to speak to the disingenuousness when it comes to how they address their issues. They neglected to speak on these issues for how many years? For a very, 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 very long time. But apparently now, for some reason, they seem to want to get off the sinking ship, apparently. Everybody is apparently breaking for themselves. They're highlighting now their issues that existed from time immemorial, whenever. But now, all of a sudden, they want to speak and highlight these issues to the people. So my question was, where was the action? We're seeing the talk. No, we heard the talk.
Mhm.
Promises made, promises kept. But really and truly, is promises made, promises broken.
Mhm.
And by the mere fact that you're speaking about it now in Parliament shows that you've not kept one promise. So then, what are we doing here? What is it that we're really trying to accomplish here? You had the government for 7 years without any opposition, basically. You had the run of the place. So you basically had everything, every resource, and every avenue to do what it is that you said that you were going to do, and you have not done it. So now, during those 7 years, the people have not seen any action. So I trust that there may actually be more individuals who might come out and speak.
And speak out. So you have a sitting MP who is boldly and openly telling the Prime Minister, you are not half the leader that Oinafo was.
That is a challenge to her leadership.
Yeah.
Basically, a rebuke and a criticism. And when I last checked, this government doesn't seem to like criticism. They ban calypsos. So she's criticizing the performance of the PM and the deputy PM.
Yes.
Because the deputy PM, that is her profile in regards to her ministry. So now, why now all of a sudden?
So you basically have a prime minister and a deputy prime minister who clearly don't know what they're doing because their own colleague is criticizing them openly.
And then they want to come and tell you that they're a unified front and that other parties aren't as unified as them. But then we're not probably going to hear anybody talk about it in the media and say, well, there seems to be trouble in the camp.
But it was openly said in Parliament.
Openly said in Parliament. It seems like they tend to gloss over the issues that the current government has in regards to their unity, but highlight the apparent, the alleged unity problems of the others. But I'm gonna stick a pin in that.
Okay, well, I'm very happy to some extent. It also tells me how do the constituents feel about this present discussions and dialogue. Now that you're seeing your MP raising those concerns, how do the people of St. James or St. Thomas, how do they feel about that? How do the constituents feel about the MPs and the representation that they're receiving? I remember there was a time that the MP Ford told our opposition leader that she no longer curses. So maybe that's why she is more, she's talking truth to power, more or less, that she has seen that we have to do right by the people. We cannot continue to use people only for elections. We cannot use them just for a vote, but we have to represent the populace. We have to represent our constituents because this is what they voted you in for. And I think it's very important. It also plays on the subconscious and of the human condition that you have had people that have entrusted you to serve them and to represent their best interest. And it seems that the people's interests were not being served. It was more about the political party, serving the political party. I'm a B, and I'll do everything that Bs do and uplight and uplift the B because I'm a B. But at the same time, you forget that it was the people, the average person, the average constituents, that in some cases were neither B or a D or anything of that nature, but gave you the opportunity to serve them. And you're waiting on an eve of the election, let's say an eve on the election because we don't know, to now say, I am willing to represent you. I'm really to serve you. I'm willing to see the concerns that you have. So it's really a dilemma. And I think it's an ethical dilemma for her because it plays in the issues of morality. Why would you want to do that at this current juncture where you know that people have been in those situations and have been crying out and pleading out for your intervention? And as I said before, she may not be the only representative. And I believe that the Barbadian populace have recognized that the MPs have not served their best interest, not when it comes to the high cost of living, not when it comes to crime, infrastructure, and education, which we'll speak at some point. They have not served the people's best interests. We see the rising costs in cost of living. We're seeing in terms of the issues of crime, more taxes. And it seems that they thought that the people would just lay low and not say anything about it. But people need to speak out. People have the right. It's a right to freedom of consciousness, freedom of expression to say. And one of the things that I highlighted that she said that, we give people freedom, but at some point, we have to regulate that freedom. And I think she's talking about the ZRs. But it also speaks about the same ministry that is responsible for the ZRs to regulate transportation. So it speaks again very deeply as to what is happening internally with those ministries, whether it's through transport and works, and even her own ministry as well that deals with elderly care. And so all of those matters, I think it's very important and relevant that we bring it to the forefront and the people understand what is happening for them.
All right, we're going to play another video from Miss Cynthia Ford again.
Walks are important now. We are talking about 100,000 vehicles on the road. And the worst are the ZRs, Mr. Speaker. I am tired. I live in rural Barbados. The behavior is so ridiculous. And if you don't have sidewalks that we can jump out of the road, God help us in Barbados, not only in St. Thomas, but across the country. The disorderly behavior needs to be addressed. And you understand they want to start working from 6 o'clock. Some of them should not be able to start to work from 6 in the morning because of the recklessness on the streets, the cursing, the unkempt workers on the buses. Who is managing them? Some of the vehicles are not working properly. You can hear it. Some of them also, you can tell that they're not stopping at traffic lights. They're doing as they like. Somebody has to control these ZRs. And I pray to God, Mr. Speaker, that none hits me. Because if one hits me, I know I will have to die. Because I know that I will have to retaliate in a way that is not what is natural for me as a loving, kind person. I have a difficulty, Mr. Speaker, the loud music and the dirty lyrics. And they're always off route. So even the Sturgis route now is one of the worst that you could ever want. And to hear of school children who, when they get in, they don't take the bus fare from the school children. They're telling them they have to pay full fare, if not get off. Or they're putting out little children and putting in adults in order to facilitate the traffic, the traveling for that adult. And little children are knocking all around the road. It is wrong, and we need to address it. This country is going down a terrible road with those public service vehicles, particularly the ZRs.
All right, she spoke about the ZR culture, the PSV sector, the loud music, and the lyrics that are being played on public transport. Bill, how is the type of music that is being played affecting the children that are traveling on these vehicles?
There's a fast fix, quick fix. If you have a SOP in place, and with what David Thompson would have done by giving school children free bus fare, it is no reason that we should still have school children on public transportation. The same way you have to provide certain documentation to get insurance, you then put systems in place that these same PSV cannot transport school children. Because at the end of the day, you cannot dictate what a man chooses to listen to. Because at the end of the day, they got persons that catch the same PSVs that want to listen to that same kind of music. But if it's going to affect the children, I think we need to ban all school children from catching the PSV because the public transportation is free.
But why go as far as banning the children and not just implementing the type of music that is being played on the vehicles?
The reason being because who's going to monitor it? The checks and balance. Where's the check and balance for putting that system in place?
It was a system that existed before. It might be giving away my age here a little bit. When I was going to school, I traveled the St. Peter Road, from Thorne to St. Peter Road. And I don't know if anybody remembers, probably you don't, because, they had a lot of these minibuses that had a lot of the paint on them. Like, you had like Mask, and you had Superdan, and these used to pay a lot of, the same lyrics that we were talking about now. Correct. Until one particular time, it was regulated that all of the paint, all of the art had to come off the vans. And then at one point in time, the music stopped. Somehow it crept back in, but it was regulated. So it wasn't something that you could say that didn't happen or can't happen or how you would do it. It was done before. Because when I was going to school, I tell myself, it's boring. No, we could best catch the bus.
You should. Well, I think, if I may add, as an incoming government, I don't think we should tolerate that kind of unethical behavior when it regards to minors. I think there are clear regulations on that. I think the Child Protection Bill should protect children in all facets, not only at home, but in the public spaces as well. I think the government and we as the opposition party has the responsibility that we should have absolutely no music if they're children, if they're minors on those buses, that children should not be subject to such practices. We've heard this kind of music that plays on those buses. As adults, we know what the lyrics are. and some of them, they do it for promotions. I know I used to catch the bus and I would hear Sofrat. I have no problems with all genres of music, whether it's dance or reggae or whatever, and also calypso. But I think with minors, they must have a sense of censorship there. We have to protect children. So I do agree to the part that though we do not want to censor adults, but with children, we have to protect them. The state has a responsibility to protect them. Again, it falls into the portfolio of the ministry responsible for transport and works. And she has to work in collaboration with the Ministry of Education. And so this is where you see the disunity and synergy between the ministries, that we as the Democratic Labour Party, we had regulations, we had a policy for children-free bus route on the public transportation. And I do agree that children should not be on some of those buses, but at the same time, there's some routes that perhaps the transport but does not go through. You see children from Spice on sometimes the buses. And let's be real. Very recently, the government told us we would have 40 new buses. Was it 40 or more? Where are those buses? Do we still having difficulties with transportation in this country, even if we're having new buses? And so the ZRs, what they do is to filter where the public buses, the transportation does not. So I think what is very important is that we would like to speak with the drivers, that these are minors. Let's be real. These are minors that we're dealing with. They're not adults. They don't need to listen to that type of vulgarity, that kind of music, that at such an early age. And I think it's important that we have to look at. So we as a society have to take the responsibility. If a child, we have adults alone on the bus, a child walks in on the bus and the vulgarity is there, you have the right as a passenger to say, hey, come on. I am not comfortable to sit in a space as an adult with a minor, and I have children, I'm a parent as well, and listen to that kind of music. And I can almost imagine, whether you're a parent or not, you're in a bus and a minor is next to you listening to that music. No, somebody has to get off the bus.
Agree.
It's probably the bus driver, because he's the one he's the one engaging in that kind of activity. I think it's important that we as a society have to look at it, that we want to see what we can. So it's really the ministry have to safeguard our children to ensure that there is sufficient buses, so that our children ensure that they took these buses. And if they want to, children will listen to music whether we like it or not. But if we are the adults and we are in control of the spaces that they're in, especially public spaces, and the government or the state is responsible for these public spaces, I think we can. I think we have to say, well, no, we're not going to tolerate any of that kind of music on the buses. It's straightforward.
But I believe that as a ministry, if your purview is over the PSV vehicles, you have that right to regulate. If they're registering with you to play their trade, you have that right to regulate. The same way that you can see that they're uniform white and red, the colors of the bands themselves, the PSVs. You can regulate that, hey, you are under the purview of the government, and this is our rules. No loud music, no vulgar music, no music at all. Because it was happening for a time. I did see it for a time. And at that point in time, it was interesting to see that the government at that time took a very serious step, because they did this question about vulgarity and influencing the minds of our young people isn't a new discourse. This has been something that's been going on for a very, 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 very long time. And where you hear the music on your public vehicles, those PSVs that try to play, who are not as highly regulated as probably as a transport board bus. But there was this issue where that they were hearing a lot of lewd music. At the time, it was violent music, but it was also very sexually explicit.
Yeah.
And very derogatory of women. So then you had to grasp control of the situation before it had gotten out of hand, and it was regulated. So it's not something that wasn't done before. It is something that could be done again. I'm not sure where the lapse came in now that culture crept back in, where now that music, the music and the vulgarity is pumping through the speakers of a PSV. But it is something that can be done, as I've seen it done before.
The only way that can be done, we have to put some serious measures in place. When you own a ZR, or one of the yellow buses. You go through your inspection. You pass the inspection. No tent, no stickers, no speakers. As soon as you pass the inspection, you can take your van and get it tinted and get the speakers and the set put in. When those guys driving on the road, they see the police, they hit the thing, and the whole front of the set will actually come off.
You know, exactly. That was what we were seeing.
Yeah.
At one point in time, we actually saw the speakers being removed out of the van.
For inspection, once you
Yeah,
pass the inspection, so again, it goes back to the check and balance. If the government, I know for a fact, as it when the Democratic Labour Party, when we assume that position, we're gonna allocate buses to the bus terminals, to all of the areas that Zadar is going. Because we can't be vexed with these Zadar that have to go off route for some people that live behind God back.
Right.
Because there's no bus stop, there's no light, and all elderly persons have to walk with canes, bags, you know, the whole work. So those Zadars go off route to facilitate other human beings. That is one. So then we need to look at the route that the transport board are allocate smaller buses to get to those people. Then we need them to put more buses just for schools. So you know, every morning you got this rush hour. You know, these are the same way the government know how much people or how much voters in XYZ house. You obviously know how much children in that same house. So in those areas, let me put a SOP in place. Let me put a check and a balance. So if we allocate more buses for that rush hour for school, move all of the school children from these ZRs, or most of them from these ZRs, because look, the music is not good. When these children leave home, no breakfast, they go and drink a ripe fruity, they eat some corn curls, they listen to that music, they go into class and they cannot settle. They cannot settle. So we then have to look at it from a different angle and put systems in place to really and truly combat our children from that kind of music. Because I like the suggestion, if you in the van, man, Ramon, Lord on that music, Ramon and the conductor can cuss you and put you off the van.
That is true.
Yeah. And it tells
Early morning, these guys smoking and drinking.
well, and
From morning.
I just and I think that is the concern when we talk about transformation of education and reimagining education, and I think this is all what we have to discuss as responsible adults, whether they're engaging in any smoking or drinking, whatever it is. These are still minors that we're dealing with. Some of them do have children, and you'd not want to know that your child is in an environment that some more or less could be that kind of negative influence as a parent. And so I think sometimes you have to risk it to say, well, you know, there's a child here, allow the child to go to school, and then you can have all whatever that you want. But I think without regulations, without policy, clear policy guidelines, then everything goes in the air. And I think that's what we have to do. I think the minister responsible for transport and work has not done a very good job at regulating those challenges. We've had too many concerns over the past few months and year where we had to deal with those private buses. We had to do it with it, and we heard about policies. I believe there was even a training session. They had to wear uniforms and everything else, but all of that is superficial. Because if you do not get to the core of the individual to allow the individual and understand that these are minors that we're dealing with, and if minors are in the environment, that it's almost illegal to do that, to have that kind of music explicit. And I think the Act speaks about that. Child Protection Act speaks about that, having minors listening to that kind of music, lewd kind of music. And I think if people become educated about those matters, if you tell people, well, you know, you can face charges for that, having minors in that environment listening to that kind of music. So I think it's important that the Ministry of Education has their work to do. They have a lot in terms of public advocacy. Ministry of Transport and Work, because they're responsible, they have to work in collaboration with. So that's one thing with minors with school uniforms. But on a weekend, children are out as well. What do we do? So we as a society have to try as best as possible to safeguard our young persons and to guide them in the right way. But we're dealing with a government that does not understand morality and ethical practices. When you have children engaging in certain activities during those fetes and whatnot, the kind of music that is being played, you see our prime minister on a stage walking up in very provocative ways, and it tells you these are the kinds of imageries that is acceptable. We have different types of music where we as an adults we say, yeah, it's acceptable. So what we tend to do is to give children an image of what the real world is, but then we exhibit something else, we display something else. So children don't listen to what we say, but they see what we do. And I think that's what is important, that we show them a different way. So yes, we have the elder minister speaking on that issues, and she has a concern about children on the bus. And I think many citizens do have a concern about young children, minors in school uniforms on buses, listening to that type of music. And I can say, as the spokesperson on education, one of the first things I would have, as you've said, is to ensure that we have adequate transportation for our students so that they would not be placed in those kind of circumstances.
You said adequate transportation. Close to the by-election, they ordered in about 30 buses. But these new buses that came in, they have less seats in them.
Oh, they do?
So even though they have more buses, they have in less seats. So when they come and pick up the persons at the bus terminals or whatever, they're not enough seating. So persons are still left in the bus stand. Now they came out and they introduced a new taxi service, electric vehicles. What is the cost, the additional cost that's going to be attached to this? Because they're not going to charge $3.50 for transportation. So this new taxi service, Zippy, who is it going to benefit? Definitely not the persons that really need the public transportation.
Well, and I think that the minister responsible, and I will keep saying that for obvious reasons, that the minister responsible for transport and work, she needs to come to the public and to address those issues. These are concerns that the public has. Your colleague have raised it in Parliament, and I think it's important and prudent that you come to the public and share what it is. And I think this is what this government has not done, is to address those issues publicly, to give the public some kind of comfort in knowing that we're speaking on your behalf. We are hearing your concerns. They seem to not want to have that kind of public dialogue with citizens. It seems that we're government and we do as we please, take it or leave it, more or less. And I think this is the disadvantage of this government. We can see the incompetence. We can see where they're lacking in their own daily, routines and management of those ministries. We're seeing that the public, they're on Brackstacks, they're in social media, they're doing Instagram, they're hearing it, but they're not responding to the public. The only way that they respond to the public, okay, well, we have a next fed, everybody show up. So that seemed to be how how the discussions with the public is. If we give them a fed, then they become satisfied. But the problems continue to drag along. The problems are still existing, and there's no kind of mechanisms that will help address those issues. And so we have a government that has, I think, have not run out of solutions, but they never really had solutions. So it seems to be ad hoc. So let's see if this solution works. Let's see if this works. So it's not something that they go in and plan. These are the concerns that we have. Let us see how we deal with crisis or case management directly and how it affects the persons, have the public dialogue. They have town hall meetings, but you see how the town hall meetings are. You see how it is. It's just one person and they bring a few of the colleagues and one person speaks. And, and we have to be honest. There's an element of fear with citizens. People tend not to want to speak out against this government for fear of reprisal or fear of being victimized. And I think that's something that we really have to discuss in terms of that as well. That do citizens feel comfortable to tell the government that you're doing something wrong. We do not like what you do, and you do not like your approach on this matter, or we believe that you can do more in the ministry or in the constituency. I think that is what it is. And I think as the Democratic Labour Party, I think this is what we will continue to do, is to speak on behalf of the persons and provide them with the solutions that is necessary for the betterment and human conditions of the citizens.
So, Damien, what are you calling on the government to do in terms of public transportation?
Well, they need to implement better regulations in regards to how they want the vehicles to present themselves, because we can't have a culture creeping in where that individuals do as they feel like, dress as they feel like, act as they feel like on the vans. Because I've caught a few of them, and some of the individuals, they're when you interact with them, they reek of marijuana, right? I have no problem with whoever wants to, but then there's a sense of professionalism that you want to bring to a regulated entity or a regulated space. The PSV is not a private vehicle where it's just owned by someone and they're just playing their trade. It is a government vehicle that is regulated. So there have to be rules and there have to be policies attached. Now, in regards to the school children, I saw someone made a comment that said that I think it is Vihoy, where he said that you can't force children to catch school buses.
Yeah.
But the whole point, but I'm gonna push back on that. The whole point to implementing the free bus fares was to get the children off of the hands.
Simple.
It was supposed to get them into a space with someone. Does anybody remember the accident on Nursery Drive?
Yes.
Where there was a school child that lost an arm because there was a van that was, rocking the cradle and all of that. This is what the government was trying to prevent at that time.
Our government, the DLP government
was trying to prevent at that time. So it is not a sin. The government can tell you what to do. The government can put policies in place and say, listen, I want this to happen between such and such a time. We will allocate buses so that the school children will get to school on time and get to home safely. The only problem with that is if someone brings a constitutional challenge. And if there's a question of constitutionality, then okay then. But at the point in time, the government tells people what to do for public safety or public interest,
especially for minors.
And especially for minors. So don't get it twisted.
No, the ministry has the right. The ministry does have the right to.
I remember in my time
look at that.
Thorne, if you were at the bus stop by Jordan's 9 or after 9, a ministry van came.
Yeah, took you up.
And took you up. You can't tell nobody waiting on transportation to come in for you.
Correct.
And they had those people leaving childcare board and scanning the whole of the city. Lower Green van stand, River van stand, looking for school children that are idling. I'd take them to school.
So the question is this putting a policy in place where that school children, if you're wearing a uniform, if you're wearing a government uniform, a government school uniform, saying that you are only to catch school buses to get to school, does that overstep your rights? That is the question.
How is it?
How is it overstepping your rights?
It can.
So the question is, how is it overstepping your rights?
What I would suggest, right? I will find the PSV for transporting children between 7 and 9. Find them. The only way you can find them, we need to have enough buses to help that issue.
All right. But
we have a comment online from Lena Bell. Have transport board buses for school children between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. None allowed in PSVs nor minibuses. Any found on the PSVs, licenses are confiscated for 3 months. This frees up the PSVs for the workers and the public.
Right. And I want people to understand something as well, that government has the right to implement a policy to ensure the safety of individuals. And if they feel or if they believe that they have the right to come and say, well, listen, school children between 6 and 9, only school buses. Between 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock, school buses. That is the government's prerogative. Now, my question really goes into the fact that we saw 40 buses were imported here recently. right?
Mhm.
Just like the money that we borrow, it seems to drop in a hole and you can't find it. You can't tell me that between the 7 years that we imported all of these buses, that we cannot have adequate school buses for children, where that in the fact that where they heard that there's certain areas where that obviously you might have to rely on a PSB, that you cannot allocate school buses for them to get to school.
Correct.
Without having to use the public transport.
Correct.
Especially in situations where that they might open themselves to hearing the lyrics or seeing the behaviors. As I said, is a question of whether you might think it's an overstepping the right, but the right to what? The freedom to movement. Is that what you're saying? Are we trampling on the child's freedom of movement? What is it that you are saying in regards that the government cannot implement a policy for them to only catch school buses to get to school?
I think the government can.
They can.
I
They
think
can.
the government can. It is very clear in the Education Act, which will be, I think the ministry is also looking to revisit that act. But the minister responsible for education has that liberty to do so, to implement those kinds of policies in terms of how students, unless if it's your parents or guardians taking you to school. But if there's a regulation because you take in public transportation, I think the MP can regulate that. The ministry responsible can regulate it. It is a matter of safety, whether we want to look at in terms of the psychological impact on students. And I don't want to jump too quickly into the other part that we need to speak about, but I went to the town hall meeting on inclusive education last evening. And one of the research, it actually shows that one of the greatest challenges for students is transportation. And the ministry has to look into that matter very critically, because one of the things is that how much can we allocate? So yes, we may have the buses, but was it allocated specifically for students? Was it allocated specifically for a particular parish? And these are the kinds of questions that the MPs, 28 MPs, and what are they saying in reference to transportation in their constituency? And what are some of the concerns? Are there sufficient buses or transportation in their constituency? And I think this is what constituents need to do. Find your MP and ask those kinds of questions. How many buses have been allocated specifically for your constituency? And I think these are the kinds of questions. But when it comes to education, the government has a problem with regulation and implementation. We know that. Like we said, more bread than butter. They will have all the nice talk and sweet talk, but when it comes to implementation and having tangible outcomes and solutions, they're very void when it comes to that. And I think one of the things that they did want to do, and I think the people, the constituents and the citizens have recognized that this government, we don't know, because at this point, when you're hearing all of those concerns and challenges, didn't happen overnight. This is a government that has won 2 elections. And we're having those prolonged issues. This is the last years. They're basically on the last leg. And now you're not hearing any of the MPs speaking on those issues, on those matters. And once in a while, you will hear one of the MPs standing up and speaking against the own government. And once that happens, then they're sidelined. And we'll see how, blackballed, more or less. But so what we need to do as an incoming government is to ensure that we have the various areas that will look into those matters and deal with those matters periodically.
All right, so we're going to dive deeper into the education topic. We're going to touch on crime in schools. We've seen many videos circulating over the last year or so with increased violence in schools. How do we curb this situation?
Is this a question for the lawyer?
This is a question for the spokesperson for education.
How do we curb violence in school? As I said before, I did attend the town hall meeting, and we have seen a government that has placed millions of dollars in different projects and programs, and still we have a pending concern about the various types of violence in schools, whether it's violence on the compound or whether it's violence outside of the schools. Based upon the research that I gathered yesterday, and this is something that I believe that we can advise the ministry to do. There is a number of research that has been done, but they do not share with the public.
Mhm.
If you do not go to the town hall meetings, chances are you may miss out on what is being said. Also, they have a problem with data. So if you ask the question, how much violence that we've seen in the past year, what is the gender allocation? Was it more boys and girls? What are some of the concerns? How was it remedied in terms of the violence? And we're not getting most of the solutions. What we're hearing is that every other ministry, because with this government, we've seen at least 4 or 5 different ministers of education within a 7-year period.
Mhm.
And the question is, how have they tackled violence in schools? We have, as a government, we as the opposition government, we have told the government what to do. We have provided them with policies, how to work holistically with the problems and challenges that they have in schools, how to identify some children that may exhibit certain types of antisocial behavior, how to deal with children that may be traumatized within their own environments, children that may have seen violence at home, violence in the communities, how it may have traumatized them and they display and exhibit that type of behavior. And so the last Minister of Education did inform us that they would have had social workers, more social workers in schools. Also, that they would have had what we would call an officer that would be responsible, safety officers in schools. What have we heard of those? The impact of security at school has always been a concern, and we're not particularly hearing much conversation on that, but we're not seeing the kind of immediate intervention that is needed. So it would happen, an event would happen, we'd see the violence in school, we'd see children exhibiting violence towards teachers, their peers, but at the same time, you would see the minister, they would respond or they would react. And then a few months later, we would not see any kind of long-term intervention plans for it. What we did see, what I did accumulate from that discussion, is that the violence seemed to be increasing because of behavioral problems in schools. And so one of the hopes that I have for the ministry is that those kinds of interventions, the policies that would help curb and eradicate some of those violences in schools would occur. So for instance, if we need to implement more psychologists, social workers in schools, because teachers are not social workers. Teachers are teachers. And you feel the strain that teachers have to deal with children, students with behavioral problems. And these are the kinds of matters that I think we have to take in consideration, and also have the ministry take a look at that as well. So most of the research that we are seeing, and I think it's very important that the ministry is undertaking those research. They have the data, but they do not share the data with the public. They do not, for some reason. It's only when you go to the town hall meetings that you would hear, okay, well, 60% of our students leave school without any kind of certification. And that is not a good thing.
But do they share the data with the teachers?
Well, they may not be necessarily sharing it with the teachers, but I think if there are areas of concerns, violence in schools, students being disruptive for various reasons, whether it's trauma, whether it's because they have different learning disabilities, then that has to be shared with the teachers. That has to be shared with the school administrators. And I think one of the things that I gathered, I do appreciate what the ministry is doing in terms of conducting the research, because you cannot design policies without research. You need evidence, and evidence-based. You need the evidence that will guide your policies. And so one of the areas that I highlighted was the issue of violence in schools, the issues of transportation, the issues of students' learning abilities, the different ways of learning. And I think that's an area that we need to look at, but also what is very critical, we can have all of those research, but if we do not have the resources allocation, it becomes a problem. And so what we have seen is a government that has every year, Ministry of Education gets over $600 million. We have different units and agencies, but we're not seeing the implementations of those programs. So that town hall meeting that I went through, that I think it's the IDB funding that is providing for inclusive. So the IDB is providing funding. So now we're seeing the town hall meetings and what they've done, because they need the research to guide the policy. But the concern is that after 7 years of this government and 600 million every year by 7, we can almost imagine how much money has been wasted without tangible outcomes that would serve our students effectively. And I think that is a concern. So you're seeing a spiral decrease in not only our academic achievement for our students, but the behavioral problems are increasing. Based upon the research, there's an increase in autism in our students and how they behave. The intervention is very critical. The government has to take inclusive learning, at a different stage. And it's not just the talk about it. Don't just talk about transformational education transformation, having a unit for ocean studies, but then you have students that cannot get access to the basic needs within the school system. And even the training of teachers is very important. So I think there's so much more that can and should be done if a government that is serious about education would do it, and would have done it a few years ago. But moving forward, we hopefully that citizens can see right through this government and the games that they play, because it's always about public perception. It's about PR for them, and not really dealing with the issues that needs to be dealt with.
Right. So I believe that we do need some early screening mechanism to determine those learning challenges in our children, because learning challenges is linked, or in a sense correlated with
Violence in school.
right,
Yeah.
violence and behavioral challenges. So we need to get that out of the way, because recently I read that there are some individuals who were caught up in the net of crime, who can't really pass the ability of a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old, which is troubling. So these individuals obviously would have passed through primary school, passed through secondary school. More than likely, they make it to tertiary, obviously. So what are we doing in regards to capturing these individuals and just letting them, just pass through a whole whatever years of life they attend school, but not giving them the tools to better themselves, or to at least put themselves in a position for economic mobility after school. So what I believe though is that obviously it is something that needs to be put into this, the testing and the implementation, the plans and so on, so that we can allocate resources to those children who really need it. Because we feel about 60% of the children that coming out of secondary school. So when you feel 60% of them, where do they go? So in regards to school itself, with the children who commit maybe acts of violence in school, maybe we can implement a restorative justice program. Restorative justice now undoes the harm, puts the individual that did the harm, puts them in a place of responsibility to undo the harm. But is that they face it head on, they apologize, they do some work in regards to, I guess, putting back the individual that they would have done the harm to back to where they were. And I also believe that parents should be held liable. I believe that parents should be held liable, because it cannot be a situation where that a teacher goes to school, is coming to play her trade, his or her trade, and they're attacked, they suffer injuries, and then that's the end of it. That's the end of the discussion. No, because we have this thing called vicarious liability. This is where an employee, right? An employer is held liable for the actions of an employee, right? So it would fall in the same line as that. Is that if your child is responsible for something that they did, act of violence to a teacher, then you as the parent has to be responsible for paying that teacher's medical bills, whatever damages has to come to them in regards of the pain and suffering that they would have felt. And I think the message would get across, because children learn from home. So we talk about social learning theory, children learn from home. So every act of violence, every act of disrespect, every act of I guess of defiance, right? It has to start with the parents. I don't want to blame the parent, but it has to start with you, because teachers only deal with your children for about 8 hours a day. But when they're home with you, you see the behaviors. You see it. You have to be on top of it. You can't bring children into the world to be just Instagram models. They can't be Instagram models. We can't just bring them there and just dress them pretty and then expect that they're going to learn to read themselves. They're going to learn to respect adults themselves. They're going to learn to respect policies and rules themselves, or learn to respect institutions themselves. They have to learn it from somewhere. So I believe that we need to tell the parent, we need to also get the family unit back involved with the with education as well,
Mhm.
because it is hard raising a child. It's easy to make one, but
Very easy.
it's very easy to make one. But
So
it's
I
hard.
didn't know about that, but as a parent, I don't think it's easy to. But we shall continue.
And we need to put more power
Yeah.
in the hands of teachers. We need to listen to them. We need to take a bottom up approach in regards to listening to their views and their fears and their concerns, because everyone in this room and everyone in Barbados has to go through the hands of a teacher. They
Mhm.
have to be touched by a teacher. Politicians, lawyers, doctors, even those individuals who do the blue collar work, all of us are touched by a teacher, and our lives are shaped by teachers. So when a teacher is coming to you and saying, well, listen, I have these particular concerns, and especially about my safety, we need to listen to them and put systems in place so as to protect them.
Yeah.
Yes. We need to approach violence in school from multiple different angles. When you experience two students fighting, what is the next step? Suspension. After the suspension, you come back to school. What is the next step? Back into normal classes, normal programming. Why not? When you experience violence in school, have the social worker do an in-depth analysis to see what is the root cause. So we have to look at it from an angle that violence started from somewhere and there's a root cause for it. Because if we look at the households, a lot of the households have all kinds of trauma and issues going on. So rightfully, what Ms. Dujon said is that we need more social workers in the school to help support the teachers in that program. In addition to that, drug testing is important. I think that some of these children should be exposed to doing drug testing.
Sorry.
Reason why I say this, because when you maneuver through Barbados on a daily basis, we have young people involved in drugs. And drugs will not do anything good for them. Marijuana, the mollies, and with these young people using such drugs, you would then see the behavioral change as it relates to if Damien stand up on my shoe, it can be a problem. Or Damien looks soft and I realize I could get money out of Damien every day, I can provoke Damien. So we need to look at drug testing. We need to look at more social workers to also go into the households to do a proper analysis to help those parents, because a lot of the households don't have fathers involved. A lot of the households might be experiencing grief. A lot of the households might be experiencing molestation. So there are different scenarios. You can even look at cost of living. Cost of living can also be a contributing factor to the behavior that we see on a daily basis. And like you rightfully said, our home environments set the tone for our children. So if our children is in that environment that Ramon tell me something constructive to help me, and then I lash out and curse at Ramon and behave in such a manner as parents, obviously the child gonna say, well, this is how daddy approached Ramon. But all Ramon was telling daddy was something to help daddy. That child or those children is gonna take that into the school. When we look at the school system, all right, I know for a fact that the MPs do not visit the schools like they should. I only see the MP visit the schools when it's the 11 plus, where they go and take clipboards and pencils.
When you say MPs, you mean all elected MPs?
Barbados Labour Party.
Okay.
Yeah. All of the Barbados Labour Party MPs this year, last year and year before. Clipboard and pencil.
Why you want them to visit the schools?
when you visit the school and you speak to each individual teacher, you speak to the principals, you then get to understand what these persons face on a daily basis. I spoke to so many schools, and I even spoke to students in these schools, in these settings, young boys. One boy said, "Man, my father don't like me. I had corn curls for breakfast this morning. I don't eat." But so we have different social issues. You get me? And we really need to, if we want to change the violence or we want to combat violence in school, we need to look at it from a holistic standpoint. Just don't suspend the children and bring them back, or don't expel the children, because when you expel boys, you only putting them in a position to get employment, which is criminal activities.
Yeah.
Because when you get expelled at 15, no work experience, no CXC, you have to get involved and build your CV around a life of crime.
Agreed. And we're also seeing an increase in drug use, not just in schools, but in primary schools.
Yes.
Having 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds on drugs.
On drugs.
I think if I may add, in as much as we want to look at that, we have students that do exceptionally well. And I think the ministry has to take that into consideration as well. So we have seen the government that has primarily focused on dismantling the 11 plus for whatever reasons that they have. They believe that our current system does not serve students adequately. To some extent, what we can say is that we need to have as much more evidence based in terms of the approach and why we want to make those kinds of changes. We have classes that are overcrowded. We have one teacher in one room having to manage a classroom of 20, sometimes 30 students. School starts at 8:30 until 3 o'clock. And you can almost imagine how the teacher has to do that. I think the management of classrooms, very important. I think if this government, and I think this is what our commission, the teaching commission with the Democratic Labour Party, we have taken that into consideration in terms of classroom management. So we're not only looking at in terms of curriculum development, but the classroom management. So we have school assistants or teaching assistants. We have to train our teaching assistants so that they can help the teachers in the classrooms. So to have a teacher, just one teacher in a classroom of 30 students, I think it's almost very difficult. As a teacher myself, I would say it's very difficult to do that. And if you're doing it with very young children, I think just to get them settled is a concern. So I think the ministry have to look at that. Either we make very smaller classes or increase the number of teachers. And pay the teachers well as well. Give them the benefits and the motivation as well. We also want to look at in terms of the time management, in terms of that. Do we really want to have students in school from 9 to 3? Or can we look at perhaps from 8 to 1 or 8 to 2? Shorten the time period. I know that, but these are discussions that we're having.
Would be more strain on the parents, leaving work.
Well, it wouldn't, but what we're saying in terms of the 1 to 2, it's in terms of academic, then students would have other what you call curriculum activities, whether it's Boy Scouts, whether it's karate, but students would be enrolled in those programs. It would be mandatory. Okay. So students would have the academic side and also perhaps the arts, sporting activities. So every child would get that opportunity. But at the same time, we want to look at in terms of the specialized education. So the ministry is looking at that. But again, it's the talk. We've had that talk for the last 7 years. The funding is very important because we're not seeing the input in terms of that. So we want to ensure that these kinds of matters have been addressed. What I would really like the ministry to take a look at is in the last 7 years, where are our students? What has become of those students? And so, yes, we're seeing the criminologists tying education, our education system, with criminal behavior, and very concerned about 13 and 15-year-old engaging in very
hard crime,
violent crimes,
serious
like
crime.
murder,
Yeah.
very heinous crimes. And so when we want to look at that, but we want to show also what has helped those students, the transitions that they've had, because you cannot have 60% of your students every year not graduating with a certification. That is very concerning. So it's not a matter of dismantling the 11 plus, but how we can provide the intervention for each student that will allow the progress, the continued lifelong learning of that student. Because all we know that every student learns differently, and you can see it in the classroom. And it's even more challenging when they're younger. So at a university level, I think you're an adult at that age, so you'll be able to manage your courses. You'll be able to go ahead and ensure that you study at a particular time and do that. But for the younger students, we want to ensure that these things are done at a very early age. So I believe that the Democratic Labour Party has remained focused on ensuring that the 11 plus is not dismantled the way that they were attempting to do that. What we are hoping to do is to ensure that we increase our allocations for education resources, we increase allocations for our teachers, training of our teachers, support unit and systems for our parents and for the community, because parents do need the intervention. Many times we think that parents are not working, but remember, parents work and they still have to deal with those challenges. And some parents still need to, the mass in 1969 is not the mass in 2025. And so parents need that intervention. So I believe the management of taxpayers' money is what is the concern, because we've seen a wastage. And I have spoken quite a number of times in terms of that while we have a government that is seeking to spend money in different areas, children that have the real serious learning challenges are not getting intervention. And Comrade, you did speak, I think both of you spoke about doing the screening early. So can you imagine in our public system, it's so difficult to get a speech therapist. So some students do not get the opportunity to have that kind of intervention. Some students do not get the opportunity to get the screening. And we had that. As the Democratic Labour Party, we had screening for our children. We had the resources for our students, but all of that was removed because our monies are not being spent in the right areas. And so now we're seeing the consequences of a lack of input, a lack of interactions, a lack of intervention. This is what we're seeing. So in the last 7 years, we're seeing our students, the gradual decline of our students, because all the interventions that we had under the Democratic Labour Party, they removed it, or they decrease the funding for it. And so when we're seeing that student that should have been, every child should be screened, not only at primary school level, but at as early as preschool level, kindergarten, they should be screened very early. Children, you can see children's various abilities at a very early age. So they should be screened at a very early age. And what we noticed, and I can share that, at the private school, every child gets screened. Certain private schools, every child gets screened before they are admitted into the schools. So they're screened, and then the referrals are being done, and then they say, okay, well, your child needs speech therapy, or your child needs whatever, and then the child gets that in collaboration with the classes. So the child would have a few hours in the morning, and in the afternoon, the speech therapy. We have the classes on the compound. And these are the things I believe that the ministry should really look into, as opposed to having all that kind of language. But the question is, I think it's the underlying issue is not primarily in terms of children and 11 plus, but really about providing the resources. If we do have the resources in the class that is tailored to each child, so that every child is aware that, and also the most important part is the data. One of the things that I find very concerning, every child goes through, we have technology and technological advancement. So you started in primary school, your record would be until you go for the 11 plus. So they should have had the data to see where that child is feeling. No child should be feeling without somebody seeing that intervention. You should have seen, because it's recorded. It should be there so that the interventions, and I think that is what is not happening. The interventions are not happening. And so when we speak about educational justice, meaning that every child has equal justice, or inclusive education, I think this is what we're lacking, that we're not using the resources that is there. We're not seeing, so there's a pattern. So every year, parents, you get the grades, your students' grades, and you see a pattern. And if you as a parent will see a pattern, obviously the teachers would see a pattern, the school would see, the ministry would see it, so that they provide the kind of intervention. But I believe that it's really a matter of leadership and priority. What are the priorities of the government at this point? Is it the priority to ensure that every child gets the kinds of resources that is necessary and adequate for their individual learning, or is it about cutting and optics? And I think that's something that we as a government have to seriously consider.
What I've noticed though is that I realized that it appears that this government has divested itself away not only from ensuring that our youth and our children receive what the resources that they need to be successful in our education system, but also in the policies that help them outside as well. Because they can bring back up the sports program again. You understand? You're not going to capture every single person, right? You're not going to capture every single person in the education system itself, but there should be fail safes. So it seems like the government has cut back, and I like to say the word divested because they don't invest anymore. They seem like they've pulled back funding for certain programs, certain programs, or just as you said, comrade. During our time, we had systems in place for children to go to speech therapists and those type of things that help in regards to their development. That is an income for someone. That is an income. That's an income that you remove now from someone who went and studied and wanted to invest in children, who want to work with children. That is gone now. So this government has very, I guess, mixed up priorities, because you can't come and tell the people we are for you. We are for you, and then do absolutely nothing for them. So they need to get their profit. No, they don't need to do anything else from us.
What is another serious concern in Barbados today? 3 years ago, Mr. Abrams happened to encourage Parliament to remove charging children for wandering. So wandering is basically you leave your parents' house and they call the police will go and get you. So now the police force and child care board have a major issue. The parents have major issues because children can leave the house and come back when they feel. Whenever they feel to come back, children will then return. You as the parent, all you can do is notify the police. When you notify the police can encourage you to notify child care board. Child care board then tell you, well, they can't do anything. The police can say, well, they can't do anything because the most they can do is go with you to get the child. Or you will have to then file a missing bulletin. So when you saw this year and last year, all of those young people keep going missing, it's because they cannot be charged for wandering. I remember guys who were charged for wandering, and then they were put in different programs. So there's no discipline at home. So these young people do not respect parents, the authorities, nor the school figures. So you would always have that violence in school.
And I think, and it's a very small, let's remember, it's a very small percentage, because the majority of Barbadian students are very good students, very polite students. Yes, please. When I do visit schools, I always see the different behavior. I not only observe the interactions of teachers and students, but I also, as you usually do, you gather to see how students are. The average Barbadian child are usually polite students, very humble. And that's what I observe. But here and in between, you'd get those, sometimes a little restless, and they may have, as I said before, the challenges in how they express themselves. And I've always made that a concern, that even as advocates, even as persons that speak on behalf of our constituents, that we have to be very mindful that these are children, that the cognitive development is not that of an adult. And so sometimes we see children from our own purview and our own perception that you should know better but no, they're minors. And that is why the law is specific towards minors. And so we have to treat them as children and recognize that they will make mistakes. And sometimes they will have error in judgment, which is what the Minister Abrams did. That was an error in judgment because he had no idea what was happening at the government school at the time. So we'll come back to that another time. But the reality is that we always have to see children, because remember, they're navigating a world that is fairly new to them. And we have to provide the guidance for them. And so many times we say, well, you know, children, they engage in violence, they engage in this, and they're doing all of these things, but we have to get to the core issues. Why is the child displaying that kind of behavior? What is happening at home, in the environment? What is happening at school? Because one of the things that was discussed at the town hall meeting is that the researcher also found that there are cases where even the adults, and I didn't want to share that, but teachers, sometimes even how they respond to children, how they respond to minors can leave a lasting impact as well, especially children with disability that the teacher themselves may not have recognized early. So if a teacher does not know that the child has learning disabilities or any kind of cognitive developmental challenges, then the teacher would assume that this child is just misbehaving, not recognizing that their behavior, and even in some cases, psychological problems with this child. And so if we do not have the science to support that, if we do not treat our children as if we're there to provide the guidance for them, then we're seeing. So what I believe is that our children in this society is really a reflection of society. We've allowed them to be on the buses to listen to that kind of music and to display that kind of behavior. So when they hear it on the bus, they come to the school with the same type of behavior. We allow our children not to, engage in holistic developmental programs, whether Sunday school, whatever it is, the programs that would engage them, the sporting activities. And so it's really about what we see, what the children see. It's a reflection. So everything that we see our children are doing, it's a reflection of us as a society. This is what they're exhibiting. And this is what our opposition leader have always spoken about, that we have a government that allows children to participate in those kinds of activities. What has happened now, it has gotten to the point where we're telling them, we don't want you to behave that way anymore, but we're still exhibiting the same behaviors that we're telling children, we're telling minors, we're telling our youth that we don't want to see you fighting in school. But I just saw people on Swan Street fighting. I saw that one fight, adults killing each other, brutalizing each other.
Yeah.
But we're telling our children, we don't want to see that. And I think so the violence in school is really a reflection of a deeper problem in our society. The violence in our society have left the homes. It is in the vicinities of the schools now. And so we're seeing the children exhibiting the same behaviors. So when you see the cell phones and you see the fights, it's no different than what you see on the fights on the boat, the boat cruises or other parties that you see or whatever. We see these things and then we tell children we don't want. And remember, children are the ones that are learning from us. So even their temperament may not be like ours. So in some adults, we are able to control our tempers, but children don't have that. And I think what we need to really do, as I said before, the Ministry of Education has a responsibility to the society to ensure not only in terms of academic development, but also to help the society recognize some of the ways that we can change our culture in some cases or our behaviors so that it doesn't become something. Because we see it all the time. Before something happens, somebody flares up, somebody pulls a gun, somebody pulls a rock. So I think it's so much more that we have to have that shift in ideologies, that shift in how we deal with conflict resolutions and conflict management, how we deal with those matters, so that our children could be in an environment where they learn something different and practice it in a society as well. And I was having a conversation today with a gentleman who told me, well, they remove all the flogging at schools and there's no more corporal punishment in school. Would that change? So we may have discussions on that as well. Would that help? I believe, if there's an element of discipline that should be guided in that sense. If you don't give students or you don't give them boundaries, you don't give them guidelines, even at university level or any institution, there are clear guidelines. Expelling a child does not save them in any way. And that should never be even a discussion. Even if you remove the child in that environment, it should still have facilities where the child, again, I'm saying the child because a minor is anyone under the age of 18. So I would assume that there are facilities that would allow the child to do that. But that's one part. The other part is that the ministry, and I will challenge the ministry to because they do not share much data with the public, to tell us how much students have dropped out from school. That is a concern. If a child have not reported for school in the last 3 months and they have not have any concerns, I've had parents call me that they've had challenges between the ministry and the school, and the child haven't been to school at 3 months. That's illegal. The child should have been in school. The ministry should have already worked that out. So these are the kinds of concerns. I think the ministry have a responsibility. I think the police, the child care board, to ensure that the children receive the kind of protection. So the ministry does not only have to deal with, and I'm hoping that one of the things that we as the DLP government, we can look at the Education Act. I've spoken quite on that matter as well, to revisit, revisit the Education Act so that it covers all of the issues that we'd want to cover. And I do believe in restorative justice. I believe people have the right to atone, but if we're dealing with minors, how much can you atone? You're a minor. And so you have to give them the latitude so that they can be educated in having their ways governed, or behaviors in a different way. So I think there's a number of issues that we can look at. But what we started off is that there's a disunity or dysfunction with the ministries. They're not working together. So the Ministry of Transport and Works, well, she's on her own because everybody's saying that they're not doing anything there. Ministry of Education is completely on its own. It's not working with the Ministry of Agriculture so that we can have better food programs in our school. And I have to say the Democratic Labour Party will be bringing in a breakfast program for all schools in the country. And I'm hoping that we can say that. We're going to ensure that all schools have the school feeding program, will increase our input of supplies for our students. So we'll have a breakfast program for all schools on the island, which would mean primary and secondary schools, because our secondary school children do need to eat and be sustained. And we will also revisit the menu. And I have spoken about that. I believe our students need to eat well, just like our parliamentary representative when they go to parliament, where they have a free course meal. I think our students deserve that as well. And I believe that they should have a lunch. Of course, the lunch program, we will also look at that. So these are some of the programs that we are looking. So we're not only looking at in terms of curriculum development that is tailored to each child and the intervention, but the increase in teachers, providing the support, and ensuring that our children and, of course, in some cases, our teachers eat well on the premises as well.
Right. Let's go a little deeper into the actual transformation, education transformation, where they introduced the idea of the pre-primary, the primary, the junior college of excellence, and the senior college of excellence. And if you look in all these categories, one of the common things that you see is robotics. From the time the child is 3 years old, robotics is something that they want the children to study.
Yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with learning computers. There's nothing wrong with learning artificial intelligence or anything, because you're preparing yourself for diverse economies, for diverse environments. When I studied computer science, I didn't realize it would have some impact with me now, because once you learn computers, you can transverse in any society at any point in time, because what computer science really does, it just upgrades and refunctions to the basics. So once you learn C++, you'll learn all programming language because you would have the basics. So my concern primarily with that structure or package, more or less, it's the resources. The resources. Can we fully functional in those societies? Because robotics is pretty expensive. If you do want to have that, you'd have to, and it's very costly as well. So what we've seen, most schools do have robotics, so they would go to classes, but do they have the adequate facilities? Because you need a facility to do and engage in it practically, because robotics is not just theory, it's practical as well, because
Yeah.
you'd want to design your own inputs and everything else. So I believe that though they have some kind of ideas in terms of what they'd like to do, the functionalities of it, whether it's feasible, and the allocations of funding. So we've had a change management department that is responsible for the transitions of those schools. And I guess we've seen in terms of what it is in terms of that. So it's very important. I believe that one of the things that we can do, every child, literacy and numeracy is very important. We have to focus on that. Math and English, that's it.
Yeah.
Ensure that they can read, they can write, and they can have a good structure of arithmetic and everything else with that. Those basic skill sets. Communication is very important. Emotional intelligence is critical. Critical thinking is something. Logic, because in robotics you also teach logic, and so that's something that people don't understand as well. Agriculture, I don't see any agricultural programs that
No, I
should
do
be
not.
implemented. We need to teach our children how to feed themselves. We can't have a society where they can't feed themselves. Ocean sciences, I think that is something because of our climate change prime minister. So I think this, but I think it's very important that the Democratic Labour Party, we do consider that, yes, the curriculum needs to be revisited. But when you talk about curriculum being revised, math will always be math, whether it's in the 14th century to the 21st century. So what we perhaps need to look at is what is the new types of ideologies that we'd want to implement, whether it's in the different types of theories that we want to look at, whether it's in maths, in English, in agriculture. The concern about those different areas would be in terms of which school would be allocated to where. So if you have a school that is primarily for business classes, which school would precede that? Would
They try to
I don't want to go
Yeah.
too deep into it and
Yeah.
cause any kind of concerns.
they tried to implement that last September, but they rushed it, and the teachers weren't ready. The schools weren't ready.
It's not only about being ready, but if I'm going to look at, and I think that is something that we have to have an open conversation with. They're all grammar schools. What would they school be specialized in?
Yeah.
Because if then you want to decide, okay, well, only some schools is going to look at
Science.
agri-sciences.
Yeah.
Why would I want to deprive anyone from doing the sciences if they're competent in those areas? And I think one of the things I may want to add is that some people, because they have different learning abilities, only evolve at a certain age. You may not have liked science when you were younger, but as you evolve, science becomes intriguing.
Correct.
I never really liked math, but then I loved computer science, so I had to love math to do computer science. So for you to deprive children at that early age, it's very concerning that you would already streamline them and say, okay, well, this, as opposed to having it how it is at this moment, where every child gets the opportunity to do robotics, the sciences, literature, and then they're able to see, okay, well, this is what I'm comfortable with and more tuned to it. So
Well,
their
this is
statement.
This is a structure that I would say is quite similar to what is being done in China,
Yes.
where you would see children from the age of 5 specializing in an area. So let's say I want to play table tennis.
Yeah.
From the age of 5 years old, all I will be doing is playing table tennis. I will be a professional from the age of 5 years old.
But we're not bees. I think when you're a bee, you get streamlined into a profession. You become a worker or a soldier, and we're not that. Our human condition allows us to explore as much as we can. Perhaps in China, there is that more opportunity. So if you want to be an expert in table tennis, then you do that. But what are the opportunities that we have in Barbados under wider extent? And I've heard the Minister of Education speak about the global economy and our students being advanced. But I believe that, and it brings back to the question that regardless of what civilization that you are, if you're good in geometry, if you're good in maths, if you're good in English or the literature, the arts, whatever that it is, it doesn't matter. Wherever you go, you will still be good. Just be the best that you are
Yeah.
and learn the basics. And I think that's a philosophy that we have to continuously teach,
Mhm.
that our students, our Barbadian students, do not have to try to compete with anybody out there. Just be the best that you are where you are, and I think that's what it is, and you will shine wherever. Our students always do well wherever they go.
Mhm.
And so it's not a matter, and every time I hear the minister say that, it cringes me, because I'm like, wherever we are, we do our best. Just be the best that you are, whatever field that you, if you're a farmer, be the best farmer. If you're a carpenter, be the best carpenter, so that you will equate to anyone across the world or the globe. And I think that that is what we need to teach our children, that self-confidence, that whatever field that you choose, and we in philosophy we call it a craft, your craftsmanship. So whether you're a professor, whether you're an attorney, whether you're a business person, that you be the best in that, and you elevate yourself to that degree. And I think what we need, it's interesting that we tend to do that quite a lot. We look at other societies and say, well, our students can do that. So we have a new transformation education, and we want to transform our entire system, not knowing that those societies have been built for centuries on those pillars. And so we have to find our own and embrace what we have, and be the best that it is, as opposed to coming and dismantling everything and try to, disrupt
Yeah.
it. Yeah, so we need to continue to be the best Barbadian student. Our University of the West Indies have been doing a fabulous job, an exceptional job, and we've had great men and women that has been the pillars. And this is what the Democratic Labour Party is. We can't forget who we are as a people, and what we have done, or what we have been able to achieve. So when we have our political founder, Errol Barrow, going out there, he didn't have to compete with anybody because he was Barbadian and he studied and lived here. And so these are the kinds of things we have to do, that and continue to embrace it and provide the resources, and don't pocket the money and do for regathering. Put it back into education, put it back into health, put it back into agriculture, and to ensure that our people get the best resources, so that they do not have to repatriate anywhere. They don't have to go out on migrate anywhere, but just be the best who they are.
So Dale, do you think that we should be asking our students, our children, to specialize at such an early age?
Honestly, no.
Mm.
I think children should be children.
Yes.
You get me? Embrace the natural creativity that God has gifted them with.
Mm.
If the current government has failed in almost everything they try to do, they go only fail with this educational reform. I think the best solution is get all of the teachers together, come up with an idea, come up with a plan, and then try to easily implement a test subject. You test it on one area, and then based on the outcome, then you can look at then implement it into the schools. What I realized with the persons from the Barbados Labour Party, they only care about implementing their idea. Their idea is okay, but however, you can run a ministry or government or department with just your idea. Your idea is only your view. I think they need to, rather than just saying no in that little circle, reach out to all of the teachers. I just listened to Comrade Felicia, and she has some brilliant ideas. I think that Mr. Blackman should resign and give her the job. Because let me be real. They implemented a lot of things, and nothing has showed success. Nothing across the board. I think that this is a disaster waiting to happen. Very much so.
The unfortunate matter with the disaster waiting to happen is that our taxpayers' money is, and that's why we getting the increases in taxes, and these monies are being allocated there, and we're not seeing the kinds of tangible outcomes. This is the last 3 years we've been talking about the transition, and you know how much money And I spoke about that. Millions of dollars have already been wasted and nothing has been implemented. And so there's this rush. Why? Because there's a pending election. So now we're hearing again about the academias. Again, we're hearing it again. But I think what is very important, and I think I will continue to see that, the most basic that you need is to teach your children the basics. For parents, I think it's very important. I know that children love devices, but at home I have a rule. If you want 1 hour of tablet or 30 minutes of tablet, you have to read a number of books for that. So you show me the amount of books that you've read, and then you would know how much time you get for the tablet. So you read and you get, that's your tablet time. And I think it's very important that sometimes we say that parents, children do not, if you give a child a book that they love, they will read that book. They will read that book. And I think that's something that we need to do as well, is to take children to the library. I know some parents do work on a weekend, and I think the library has been going to the communities, and I think we need to continue that. For some parents where it's very difficult, they have challenges with literacy as well. What you do is you get a basic book. If it's one of those books that you create, was it the storybook that was with somebody went to the beach? Anne went to the beach. Somebody went to the beach. I can't remember those little storybooks. Jim or somebody went to the beach.
Yeah,
Jim and
Jim.
Dad.
Yeah.
Even though it's those words, the Ladybird
Yeah.
books. If we could get that, and you start with the basics, and if you do that every day, you read 1 page every day or 2 sentences every day with a child, that changes the worldview.
Yeah.
And I think when children get caught up, so what I would do with my children, okay, well, they're boys. You want to read about bikes, let's get books about bikes. We'll just read about bikes the whole week. And I think you have to get, when I was growing up, I loved books about aliens and things of that nature, because my dad worked in a library and he would bring all what you call those magazines, but also those books, Reader Digest. So the Reader Digest, I know I'm very old. So the Reader Digest, I don't know if they still have them. I think they have them online. The Reader Digest was one of the most amazing books for me. I did that, and Jehovah's Witness have what is Watchtower?
Watchtower.
Now
Yeah.
the Watchtower, they would have controversial issues. So at a very early age, I would read those to find out what is going on. I think that's what is important, that we start with the basics. So I do believe that everyone should do that. And mathematics, the basics. Because in maths, there's only 4 formulations: addition, multiplication, subtraction, and division. No matter how high it goes, there's only 4. And once you learn that, then you can go as far as you can go. And I think that's what it is. The social studies and all these other areas would come. And so the practical element is very important, and we need to look at that. But we have a government which believes that it has to have a legacy. But that legacy, we've seen what that legacy looks like. And Minister Ford showed us what this legacy is. And I made a note what she said. And she openly said to us this evening that this country is going down to a terrible road. That is the legacy that the Barbados Labour Party has left for us in the last 7 years. And I would like to applaud Ms. Cynthia. I'm so happy that you have stopped the cursing so that you can share that with us, because that is the legacy, that this country is heading to a very dangerous path. And we're seeing it not only in education, we're seeing it in the cost of living, and we're seeing it in crime. And I'm so glad that an elder is reaching out to her own government ministers to tell them, but are they going to listen? It is a different question.
Damien, do you think that we should be asking our children to specialize at such an early age?
I got one question I want to ask. The question I want to ask Damien: how many career choices you had when you was a child? I had about 15. I don't want to be Batman. I don't want to be a pastor. I don't want to be some of everything. So that's just my question to you. How many career paths you had as a young boy?
Listen to me. The amount of times I invested in wanting to be something, and I don't want to say it failed, but basically I had to pivot to something else. I wanted to be a professional athlete. That didn't work out. I wanted to be a teacher. That didn't work out. I wanted to be a lecturer. That did not work out. I wanted to be so many different things till I found myself being an attorney at law.
I was an architect for 6 months. That didn't work out.
And and the thing is, right, is that there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. I started over so many times.
So many
Yeah.
times.
So many times, right, till I got where I am right now.
Yeah.
And maybe someday I might be the minister of something in Barbados.
And you will.
Yeah.
And
you
you
know,
will.
and investing in our
Yeah.
children, you know, trying to invest in our people
Yeah.
or what's not. But to Melissa's question,
Mhm.
I don't believe that children need to specialize at an early age.
Mhm.
You can identify skills, you can
Mhm.
identify talents, you can identify intelligences early, but keep it fluid. You don't want to, I say, you don't want to restrain them to just one particular profession because you think, oh, this person, they can draw really well, so we're gonna push them down the path of
To
being
be
an
an artist,
architect or
yeah.
artist and an
Yeah.
architect or what's not. So you don't want to do that. What I find with this particular government is that they are so infatuated with the globalist idea, these
Mm.
ideals, this agenda that they have. They import so many different ideas from different cultures and territories, and,
Without taking hours.
you know, and we're ignoring Barbados. What makes Barbados Barbados? The culture, the dialect, the music,
Perseverance.
perseverance, our people. Because when Arabaro said he didn't want to see any more cane in Barbados, he wasn't trying to say that, you know, that he felt that people who worked in the cane fields were inferior.
Mhm.
He said that he felt that he saw something better for Barbadians, and he saw it to a path of education.
That's
Mhm.
right.
So why is it that you want to import all of these different ideals from different, I guess, territories or policies from different
No,
territories?
we are influenced by who we borrow money from. So if we take money
And
from
that's very dangerous, because then
Mhm.
when you take money from people that I guess because you want to grab at every little cent that you could get, then you find situations where children are taking very questionable questionnaires, questioning their sexuality and
yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
like that. Because then you have to you have to dance to the beat of their drum.
Mhm.
And that's not the way it should be.
It's
That's
true.
not the way it should be, because if, as I said, going back to how is it that we are borrowing so much money we don't know where it's going? But yet you're talking about our debt to GDP and our revenue is so good, but then you still borrowing money to do every single thing in Barbados.
Mhm.
So there are questions there, and I will speak again to the MP for St. Thomas. Maybe a little bit too late, but I'm glad that you said something, because then it shows the people in Barbados that there are cracks in this government. They've always been cracks. It's just that they tore the line, and they realize now that the road is running out, and they cannot pull the wool over the people's eyes anymore. They can't go to the media with their talking heads and tell their friends to say, well, praise us on this or praise us on that, because no, then people are not buying it anymore. So they have to break for themselves and say, oh, well, there was always issues in my constituency, and I'm telling people that we're going down the wrong path.
Mhm.
Too little, too late. Thank you, because it works for us now, because we've been saying that for years, and now they have nowhere to hide it. The emperor has no clothes. So I'm very glad that this is coming out now, because if you want to, I guess, pull the wool over the people's eye now and say promises made, promises kept, where are the promises made? Where are the promises kept? Because I haven't seen any.
Yeah. Nowhere.
Nowhere.
Mhm.
And this is what you swept in to the government. You swept into power with this. You complained that we were at $15 billion at debt on the international institutions or what's not. You're $15 billion right now in 7 years. So you're right back there faster than when you were complaining about it.
With nothing to show.
With
Yeah.
nothing to show,
Mhm.
only money borrowed. And I will be very, 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 very terrified to know that my children or my great grandchildren or whoever is going to have to pay that with the little salaries that they have, with the little taxes, the over taxes. Now that we're saying that there's a tourism levy, oh, it's not a tax. Yes, it's a tax.
It's a donation.
The tint is a tax. And they're writing hard for that, because they're not gonna. It seems like they're not gonna back down on that. Why? Why are you not backing down on that? Because you're short of money.
Mhm.
Your revenue is not doing the things that you want it to do. That's why you're borrowing money. What are you borrowing the money to do? Pay salaries, pay back debts. You already know that.
Mhm.
And if it's a situation where you're borrowing money to run a country, we are going over a fiscal cliff. This government has mismanaged this economy for 7 years, and now they cannot hide it.
Well said. As humans, we are always changing, ever evolving. So the last point we're going to speak about, the road to robotics and AI. If we're so heavily reliant on the computer, the AI, the robotics, we are not using our own minds. We're not thinking anymore. Our critical skills would decrease. What is it doing to us as humans?
Where did you find that question? um, I think our human condition will always override technology.
Mhm.
And I don't know if the next century that can hold, but I think there are conditions that artificial intelligence and robotics have not been able to fully understand, or even grasp.
Mhm.
And I think what is important, and I think what is critical at this point, is that we teach our children ethics and morality and ethical decisions and rights and wrong. Um, Robotics can't teach you that. They can't teach you how to be a good person, how to be a moral being. They may
Mhm.
give you guidelines on it. Robotics may be able to do all in terms of productions and lines and things of that nature. And artificial intelligence, again, they're all programming languages, but our human condition is unique. It is unique to the sense that human beings, we have that innate ability to transition and transform in any space
Mhm.
and time. And I think that is what is important for us, that if we teach our children to be good human beings, that regardless of what time era, so perhaps in the next 30 years, we're not here, but our children would still know how to be a good human being and to remember what the BLP did to their future. And so that's something that we have to continuously to teach, is to be good citizens, be noble beings, be persons of integrity and morality, so that regardless of those worlds that you have, I think Bob Marley has a good song that talks about that regardless of all the technologies, you still be a good person, you still be a
Mhm.
good human being and make good decisions. And I think that's what it is. So we can teach those areas, we can teach AI, we can have our students understand what the world looks like, understand that virtual space, and we can teach a collection of areas, because new areas will evolve.
Yeah.
New academic vocational areas will evolve, but at the same time we ought to continue to teach our children to be good noble beings, could be a good Barbadian, what it is to be a good Barbadian, and not to put high debts on your citizens, because it's almost like you do not care about the future generation, which is quite ethical. So these unethical. So these are, I think, what is important, that we teach persons what it is to be a good citizen, what it is to be a good human being.
Dale?
I personally think that the robotics, the AI, has its place,
Mhm.
but I think that right now, as a government, you know, I think that the government, not as a government, I think that the government should focus on sports, agriculture. Reason being, we have not had an Olympic gold medalist ever. Why is that?
Hopefully we got one.
We should have multiple. So when you look at Jamaica and other Caribbean islands, they have a lot of gold medalists, persons that perform really well in sports. Rather than wasting money trying to implement a new system, look at developing the current systems. Put more funding into sports. They put funding into sports, they like to create programs. I think you could do a lot more in sports than robotics and AI. And that is just very standard. And that's just my view as it relates to AI and robotics. I believe that the government should invest more in sports.
Damien?
My question is when you shift now to this robotics and AI, and you say that this is where our focus is now, do you have the resources, the plans
Mm-mm.
to really?
No, they don't.
So then,
And don't forget the amount of jobs that this AI and robotic world will take away from humans.
Simple.
so I what I always see, apparently from this administration is that they make plans, but they don't have, I guess, the foresight to see where it's going to go or how they're going to get it done. Marijuana initiative, the banks aren't working with them, but they implemented it anyhow. So individuals who want to get into it, they can't bank money here.
So we're on a path where
That it's not sustainable because okay, do we have the plants that we can then see we can invest in this robotics industry and manufacture the types of robotics that we want to, the area we want to get into? Do we have the, I guess, the spaces or to invest in AI so that we can give our the people, their children, their youth, the fair chance, the adequate chance to say that they can succeed in the venture that you want to push them in? So then what are we doing? So it's just a pipe dream. It's another pipe dream, and it's poorly planned and will be poorly implemented. Not saying it doesn't have its space, but it just sounds like it's going to be something that's going to end up in wastage.
Well, I am a movie fan sometimes. And I remember the movie I, Robot, where we created all these robots.
Correct.
And they killed all the humans.
Listen.
Only one human remained to fight back.
Listen. This is wow. I'm really, really, really old. It was a robot for you, but it was Terminator for me. It was Terminator for me with the AI, Skynet, and then they got self-aware and they launched nukes at everybody, and then everybody launched back, and then John Connor, who was the leader, and then he had to go and fight this war and send back Reese in the past. I know I sound like a nerd, but you know, but that was fiction, right? That was fiction X amount of years ago.
With a little truth in it.
With a little truth in it. And if anybody used to watch the All-Star track with Captain Kirk or whoever, Captain Kirk had cell phones and iPads. Before we had cell phones and iPads, communication devices and the Bluetooth headsets on their ear or what's not. So these things are really happening, right? Yes, AI has its place and it's here now. There's nothing you can do about it. I just keep it.
No, I think we should.
No problem.
If I may say so, it's the same thing that we said in 2000, where Y2K everybody would be wiped out, and every generation gets very. We have all of those theories that may sometimes, as I said before, it's the human condition. It is humans that are creating artificial intelligence and robotics and everything else. And so I think they shouldn't have any fear of it. I think we should embrace the technology, but at the same time, recognize there are ethical and unethical practices with it as well.
Yeah.
Just like in science, there are good ways, good practices and bad practices. And so that and as I said before, once we teach persons how to be moral and ethical beings, they will know how to use those technologies or those devices. So if you're an unethical computer programmist, you will do things that will create the world to end and everything else that you want to talk about. But if you someone that is looking into good nature, and of course, with technology, things can occur. We can have the negative impact of them. But I think it is critical that we teach our children. We can't have our children live in an environment where they're not aware of how to engage those different technologies and spaces. I think it's important to do so.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our show. Viewers, I thank you for joining us once again for DLP TV. Thank you to the panelists, and thank you to the producer. And we will see you all on Thursday for another DLP TV. Good night.
Good night.
This one is dedicated to all you parents. Right there in your bed, you so deceived. Often you were warned, you wouldn't take heed. You didn't see the need kill grass and loss of ants, affecting the lives of all them young plants. But if it's the quality that you want to reap, then lots of interest you have to keep. You must work hard from your garden. Plants need much more than watering. You have to pay special attention to the changes that come with the season and to the soil condition. Cause when you plant potato, you will reap potato. That's what they mean when they say you reap whatever you sow. But you must pick up your fork and hoe, and you must use the right manure. Cause I say you reap whatever you grow. Most of us are pleased to be just planters. Well, I think it is time we become farmers. Watch for crop raiders, check on them suckers. Care your plants from hatch to the consumers. You must put the fence around your garden. Stop all them stray dogs from entering. And all of them wildcats when they cater whirling. Cause all of your plants they are destroying. All seeds wouldn't fall on good ground. The rocks and the thorns will get some. And those that fall way out of line, you can save them if you catch them in time. This you must bear in mind. Cause when you plant potato, you will reap potato. When they say you reap whatever you sow, but you must pick up your fork and hoe, and you must use the right manure. Cause I say you reap whatever you grow. Some of you really try your best, but still you're reaping limited success. No need to wonder, loss you must suffer when Mother Nature shows her power. Some plants are very perishable, and without care more vulnerable. But you must keep working hard, you cannot stop. You must get the best you can from your crop. Then you reap and put out on display. You get a good price market day. But if you can't handle the toiling, I think you should